weirdos. I'm Ash. You're Elena.
And I'm Elena.
And this is Morbid.
This is Morbid.
What are you laughing at?
We paused before recording this because Mikey was leaving the room. And when he said, it's recording, Ash said, I'm waiting for you to leave.
No, I said I'm waiting. Didn't I say I'm waiting for you to close the door?
Something like that. Nicer. But we were like waiting for you to get the fuck out of here.
I'm waiting for you to be out of my fucking presence for me to start my show.
Whoa. We're in a place called space.
Had a Diet Coke, different from a Baja Blast, but same in its results, where I just get cuckoo crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a busy weekend.
It was a busy weekend.
And there's a busy couple weeks ahead of us. I have, like always, like has been the case the last couple years, I don't know when this comes out. So I don't know if you're going to get this.
2 weeks.
I will have already, I think I'm already at book things.
I think you've finished them.
Okay. What either it's going great or was great.
If you're listening early and ad free, then we're at book things right now.
Oh,
and
it's
if
so much
you
fun.
don't, we have already been at book things.
It is, hey, everybody who's listening to it as it's happening. It's going great. We're
awesome.
having a lot of fun. You guys rule who are there.
Our outfits are phenomenal.
Hey, everybody, that it's already happened last week. It went so well, and thank you for being there.
And our outfits were phenomenal.
It's true.
And you've seen them by now. I'm really just in it for the cute fits.
Yeah, time and space don't mean anything.
They mean everything.
Whoa. Contradictions.
Quite the contrary.
Yeah, you can still buy the book, though.
Buy it.
Regardless of when you're listening to this. You should buy The Butcher Game. You can get it at thebutchergame.com. You can get it anywhere you get books. By the time this is out, it's probably going to be on a shelf somewhere, and that's fun. Go grab it.
That's really cool.
I'm also going to sign a bunch randomly.
Just going to go around to different places.
So I'll let you know when I do.
In different states even.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be this. I can't believe you're going on like a literal sort of book tour.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little teeny tiny one, but
it's still a tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a tour for me. I can tell you that much. But I'm excited.
I'm excited.
Or I was excited. Regardless, whenever you're listening, who knows?
Yeah.
But you know what? I am eager to tell this story.
Yeah.
Of this case, because this case isn't solved really.
Oh.
It has a determination.
Okay.
To it, but it is controversial.
Oh.
The determination. And I'd like to give you all the information, or as much information as I could find.
Okay.
And that Dave could find. And then you guys can make your own determinations. But this family really, really would like this to be out there. And they're really trying to get attention on it still. And they have been for a long time. They've been fighting the good fight. So it's important that after you listen to this, have your theories.
Yeah.
But just remember that, like, none of us know what happened here.
Real people.
And that there's truly evidence and lack of evidence for both theories. Okay. So there's no, like, it's not cut and dry. In my opinion, it is not cut and dry either way. Okay. So it's just important to remember that none of us have the evidence to say either way. So, you know, hopefully we will have it at some point. Great. That's the whole thing, is I hope that they get to reopen this whole thing and they actually get evidence that they've been looking for. Either way, just so this family can know what happened.
Have answers, yeah.
Because it really is one of those things where they just don't know what happened.
And that's
gotta be really shitty.
I feel like a lot of people say that's even worse than knowing.
Yeah.
Is not knowing.
That's the thing. I feel like, because then, I don't know, I don't even know closure. I always say, I don't know if that's the word. Yeah. But just, I don't know. You just want to know. You know, when it's your loved one. So this is the mysterious death of Tiffany Valiante. Okay. It's definitely a mysterious death. Yeah. I think everybody's going to be scratching their heads at the end of this.
Her name sounds familiar. Yeah.
So Tiffany Valiante was born March 3rd, 1997. She was the youngest child born to Stephen and Diane Valiante. From a pretty early age, Tiffany showed that she was a true athlete. Yeah. Like, really athletic. She showed a real aptitude with softball in junior high, and then she ended up playing volleyball in high school.
Nice.
And she was so good. Like, so good. She went to
volleyball is hard.
Yeah. And it's so taxing on your body.
Yeah, it is.
Like, crazy. She went to Oakcrest High School, and she was one of their star athletes.
Wow.
Like, truly made an impression. And it was actually for that reason, for her skill and leadership abilities in volleyball in high school, that she ended up earning a sports scholarship to attend Mercy College in New York in the fall of 2015.
Wow, good for her.
That's a big deal.
That's huge.
They don't just hand those out.
No.
When she went there, she was planning to study criminal justice.
Hey.
But unfortunately, while she was so excited about her college career to begin, her life was tragically cut short before she even made it to New York.
Oh, no.
So she was never able to make it to college, which is so sad. On the afternoon of July 12th, 2015, Tiffany went to a graduation party at the home of her cousin. And this home was right across the street from her own family house.
Oh, wow.
She, spent the day hanging out. She was swimming, hanging out with family around the pool. And the party started to kind of wind down in the early evening. So she went back home across the street. She showered, she changed, and she had plans for later in the night. So she was going to be doing that. Now, as the graduation party was wrapping up, Tiffany Valiante, who is Tiffany's mother, got a phone call from one of Tiffany's friends. And this friend said, I have to speak to you right away. So they were like, okay. So they were like, she was like, meet me at the house. So Diane and her husband, Tiffany's dad, said their goodbyes to everybody at the party, and they left and went home. When they got there, they saw that Tiffany's friend and her mother were pulled into the driveway. And they both jumped out of the car and apparently immediately started like getting upset. Okay. And they were accusing Tiffany of taking her friend's debit card and using it without her permission.
Okay.
So they were like basically coming to like tell her Tiffany's mother, like, this is what happened. Diane said that she remembers there was a lot of yelling. So of course they grabbed Tiffany. They were like, what the hell's going on? She denied it and said, I didn't do any of it. So after the friend and the mother ended up leaving because they were like, we're going to let you guys handle this. Yeah. Diane was like, maybe, they were in Tiffany's car together. Maybe this friend just like dropped the debit card in the car or something. Like, let's go check your car and see if it's in some of the crevices or something.
That I can't even tell you how many fucking times that's happened to me.
Yes. But as they were doing that, she did catch Tiffany trying to hide the girl's credit card in her pocket. Okay. So Diane was pissed. Yeah. Because she was like, you stole a girl's credit card. What the hell? Or debit card. And you lied to me. And you lied to me. That was like the big thing. Like, you just made me look crazy here. Like, what the hell?
Which like teenagers do. Of course. This
is really shitty teenage stuff. But she was mad. Yeah. But she lectured her. Like, basically, like, you can't do this. That's horrible. Blah, blah, blah. And she said Tiffany seemed very remorseful and explained it was just like poor judgment, like a moment of poor judgment. I don't think she really gave a good explanation. Like, even her mom was like, that explanation seemed very like half-hearted.
Maybe there just wasn't one. I feel like sometimes you do things when you're a teenager and you don't even know why. Impulsivity.
Yeah. It's like, who knows? Who knows if the friend and her got into like a little spat argument. Right. I'm not saying it's okay that she took her credit card.
No, obviously not.
I'm just saying like teenage stuff sometimes doesn't make any rational sense whatsoever. So Diane went back inside to get her husband because she was going to explain what had just happened. Yeah. And they both went back outside to talk to Tiffany, and Tiffany was gone. She was just in the driveway, and now she's not. Diane said she was out by the car. I walked inside to get my husband. I only left her for 1 minute. I walked back out, and she wasn't there. What? Yeah. So this was strange to her parents, Diane and Steve. They were like, what? They were like, she wouldn't have just left. Like, she's not a kid who stomps off in the night and goes and leaves. That's just not what happened. She was like, and this argument wasn't like explosive. It's not like they were like, she's screaming and yelling and all that. They were just, she was like, like, what the hell? Like, what's going on? She's giving the explanation. Like, she's I don't know if I buy that. I'm going to go talk to your dad. Yeah. It wasn't anything crazy that she would like go running off into the wild blue yonder.
And even you think like the mother went to get the father, and then they go back outside and she's gone. Like, I just picture them walking to the end of the driveway and like looking down the street and not seeing her anywhere.
She was like, not only would she not have done that, but I don't think she could have done that. Like, she was like,
that fast.
I don't know how she would have left the property in the time it took me to get in and out. Like, it was, like, shocking. She was like, I didn't stay in there for a while. Like, I got her father and brought him outside.
Yeah, right.
Like, she would have had to run.
Right.
Essentially. And again, it was like an argument, but it wasn't like this crazy heated argument. And Tiffany had a phobia of the dark. Like, she was literally, like, had that phobia. She couldn't handle the dark.
Yeah.
And by the time they had returned from the party, the sun had gone down completely. It was dark. Mm-hmm. So she would not be walking into the darkness by herself. And we'll get more into that later because, like, there was, like, coaches that knew this about her. Like, everyone in her life knew that she could not be in the dark.
Oh, wow.
So they were like, all of them were like, she would not have walked out into the darkness. Yeah. It just wouldn't be something she could physically do, like, or emotionally do.
Yeah.
So Diane and Steven went back across the street to see if maybe she returned to the graduation party, like went there.
Yeah, I could see them, like, thinking that.
No one at her cousin's house had seen Tiffany since she left the party earlier.
And then you just think that she, like, there's so much family and friends in this one consolidated area, and she just fucking vanished.
Well, and so they called her phone a bunch of times, and nobody answered. So they were like, all right, the only thing I can think of is that she left out of anger. But, like, even though that doesn't make sense, that's literally the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
So they called her sisters, Jessie and Crystal, and her uncle, Michael Valiante, who was a former New Jersey state trooper.
Oh, okay.
To help find her. They all split up. They drove all around the neighborhood looking for her. They didn't see her at all. Nowhere.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And after 2 hours, no sign of Tiffany.
So she had to have gotten in a car, like, very quickly.
It's
like possibly abducted.
That's literally. So a little after 11 p.m., Steven, her father, went back to the house and was walking up the driveway, and he spotted something in a pile of leaves at the edge of the Valiante's property. And he leaned down to look, and it was Tiffany's cell phone.
Oh, my stomach just flipped.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Tiffany's cell phone in a pile of leaves at their home. Like, right on the edge of their property.
Yeah.
And he said he panicked immediately, like, alarm right away. He said Tiffany never went anywhere without her cell phone.
No one does.
And Diane said she even bought a waterproof case so she could bring it into the shower.
Wow.
Like, you know, so when they found that, they were like, fuck. Like, what does that mean?
Like, what is going on?
Within the half hour of finding that, they reported her missing to the police. Now, the family continued searching for Tiffany for several more hours, but they found no sign of her besides that cell phone. And as this is going on, about 4 miles from their home, officials from the New Jersey Transit Police had started gathering to investigate an accident on the Atlantic City rail line. According to the student engineer who was driving, the train had been traveling to Atlantic City from Philadelphia at 80 miles per hour and had just reached mile marker 45 when a pedestrian, quote, dove in front of the train from an east to west direction.
Oh, wow.
So at the time, it was impossible to identify this person.
Yeah.
The impact of the train had crushed her skull and destroyed any identifying features. And also, what they could see, they were confused by because this victim was dressed only in underwear. So they didn't have any identifying documentation, like a driver's license or a student ID. Like, it was just this person they couldn't identify in their underwear.
Like, only underwear?
Only underwear.
Okay.
Now, because of this, the individual was pronounced as a person. That's all they could pronounce them as.
Oh, my God.
And the remains were removed from the scene and taken to the medical examiner's office. And I say the remains because at this point, they literally didn't know who this was. Like, could not determine whether it was a woman, a man, a child, anything. Like, they couldn't figure out any of this.
Wow.
And the accident was immediately believed to be a suicide.
Okay.
So at the time, the investigators didn't treat it like a crime scene.
That's not good.
We've seen this before. Mm-hmm. When they go in with a preconceived notion, shit goes awry. Mm-hmm. And that's when these kind of things go on for years. Why don't you just treat it like a crime until you are 100% shown otherwise?
Yeah, because you can't just rule that out right off that. I mean, people stage things to look like suicides all the time.
And also, what a way to make sure this person and the marks that you inflicted upon them are not identified.
Right.
Throw them in front of a train.
Yep.
They're not going to be able to tell anything that happened to them before that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it absolutely would be a thing. So why are you not even considering that? Uh-huh. And they're in their underwear.
Like,
that
which is
ring to
immediately
you
strange.
Is a little strange.
Big strange.
So, again, they didn't treat it like a crime scene. So things that would have ordinarily and obviously been collected as evidence, like broken pieces of a charm bracelet that were scattered across the tracks, were just left behind.
Oh, just the thought
or
of
handled
that.
Carelessly.
The thought of that is so sad. Just like a charm bracelet.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that.
Oh, it's awful. Now, in the early hours of the morning, as the Valiante family's concern is slowly growing into full-blown panic, Michael Valiante, the uncle, received a call from a former coworker asking him to come down to the medical examiner's office.
Oh, no.
When this person was discovered on the tracks, New Jersey transit officers contacted local police, and they asked them, are there any missing persons reports that have happened recently? That's when they heard that Tiffany Valiante had been reported missing. So because of that, investigators believe they were extending professional courtesy by contacting Michael first.
Yeah.
Instead of grabbing Diane and Stephen first.
Yeah, I kind of get that.
I can understand that. After speaking with Michael Valiante and having him come down, transit police, quote, determined that the remains were Tiffany.
What?
Yeah. So Diane said, I remember a car pulling in and my brother-in-law got out of the back seat. I heard him say Tiffany got hit by a train and my 2 kids were just screaming and my husband is screaming and I'm like, what did you just say to me? Because like what?
How could you even process
She was
that?
in the drive. What are you talking about? She was standing next to my car. Right. 1 minute, she's gone and now she's got hit by a train. Like, what are you talking about? Incredible shock. And again, they had just been celebrating Tiffany's graduation.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? What do you mean? So to make it all worse, the investigators who relayed the news were unable to give any real details about what had happened at the moment. Diane said they just said she was hit by a train. They didn't tell us anything else. We thought she was in the car with someone, that the car got hit. Like, they're like, they don't even know that she got physically hit by a train,
like just
her
her
person.
Yeah.
So the details the Valiante family were seeking finally came the next morning, but not from police or transit authority investigators, but from the local press.
Great.
Yeah. The article described how Tiffany was, quote, struck by a train after refusing to move when the conductor sounded its horn. Just to tell you ahead of time, that will be disproven.
Yeah, and also somebody said she dove in front of the train, which
there's several
makes
stories
you wonder
that
if she's thrown.
Well, there's several stories the student engineer tells, and then eventually is found to be lying.
Great.
Because the sounding the horn thing, no, I guess we'll see about that. Okay. The authorities had labeled her death, quote, an apparent suicide. And the news shocked everybody, including the Valiantes, who couldn't understand why the fuck the press was reporting Tiffany's death as a suicide within hours of it happening. And Diane said, my husband called the paper up to tell them that was wrong. But because of course they don't. They're like, this must be so hard to hear.
Yeah,
you're just
you haven't
like,
even processed anything yet. And the press is like, guess what?
Yeah. And so they called the transit police and they confirmed that less than 24 hours after Tiffany had died, and without any consideration of any alternative explanations, it was just labeled a suicide. That was the end. They didn't investigate it at all.
Okay.
So the news came to Tiffany's friends as very bewildering as well. They had never seen any indication of depression or potential self-harm, which of course we all know sometimes that happens. So that's not like a total perfect indication of what's going on with somebody. A lot of time, I mean, I think we just covered one recently where, you know, somebody said they were acting totally fine the day before, and like, why would they do that?
Right.
I think it's just one of those things, but you absolutely can like at least take them as like at their word. That, like, she didn't show any indication.
Right.
Her friend said she had everything going for her, and she did, because she received a volleyball scholarship to Mercy College in New York. She'd already connected with her future roommate there. Like, they had already started bonding. She'd made a long list of summer plans with friends and family. And from what they could see, she didn't have a personal history that you would expect to see in a teen who has contemplated suicide.
Yeah.
She didn't have a history of mental illness. She had a large support system of family and friends. She did have tension with her parents. She was a teenager.
Name a teenager that doesn't.
And like, you know, she didn't have like the, it sounds like, you know, they were in a rough patch.
Yeah.
Their relationship, which again, not an indication that like, not a total perfect like confirmation this is why it would happen. But Diane and Stephen said they couldn't think of anything that would explain a suicide either.
No.
which again, we all know. It's one of those things. Sometimes it does happen.
Yeah.
When no one can see it.
But it does sound like in this case,
but in this case,
weird,
it sounds like there was
shit.
definitely no indication like outwardly that this was happening.
Right. And it sounds like shady shit is coming.
Well, and also what you're going to see too is like people had different interpretations of what went on.
Okay.
So it's like there's that to consider as well. But again, there's really, to me, there's no concrete evidence of suicide here.
Okay.
There's circumstantial, for sure.
Right.
But there's also circumstantial evidence to at least entertain the idea that there was foul play here.
Yeah.
I think there's evidence to be said on both sides, and there's evidence against both sides.
And that's why everything should just be investigated.
That's why I think it just needs to be like, because it was mishandled, and you'll see how much nobody can deny this was mishandled. But again, as Dr. Michelle Scott, who is a professor at Monmouth University, told reporters after the death, she was basically saying what we were saying. She said, while everything may look fine on the outside, there could be an internal struggle going on that no one knows about. And she mentioned times of transition, such as the end of high school or the end of the school year, can trigger depression issues. And sometimes kids can act irrationally. Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. But again, she wasn't going off into like the wild blue yonder without a plan, without some bonds forming. Like, she had a scholarship. That's a big deal. She liked playing sports, so she was going to be able to play more sports at a higher level.
Right.
She was going to a university she was excited about, had plans to study criminal justice. She had already connected with that roommate. Mm-hmm. Like she was going forth,
Yeah.
And again, as like people will mention, like there was a strained relationship in the house and like things were a little tense. Okay, sure, maybe. Like I wasn't there, but she was going to be going to college.
Yeah.
So if there was
an end in sight,
I'm going to college,
Yeah.
But again, it's really hard to
say,
to understand what people are going through when you're not in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I said, even though it seemed like everything was fine, she was at least dealing with a little bit of that emotional upset, like the strained relationships. Years later in a deposition, one of Tiffany's friends said she had recently come out to her parents.
Okay.
And while they say they were generally supportive of her, the friend believed things may have been more strained than usual in recent weeks.
Okay.
Her uncle, Michael, also stated that there was at least some turmoil happening, in the house or in her life leading up to that. Nothing earth-shattering, but just she wasn't like the happiest go luckiest in the weeks leading up to this because she had some stuff going on.
Yeah.
In his statement to the New Jersey State Police, which he gave in the early morning hours after her death, he told the detective that Tiffany, quote, had gotten into some trouble the day before, as well as the day of her graduation party. And her friend stated that she had, quote, cut herself and was extremely upset.
Okay. So that is like history of self-harm.
Yes. But he also reported that Tiffany's relationship with her parents, again, was kind of had some tension, and that she, quote, was extremely distraught over some of the things that had happened. I want you to take all that, but hold on to it.
Okay.
Because it's not exactly what it seems.
Okay.
Yeah. So 4 days after Tiffany's death, investigators brought in bloodhounds to track Tiffany's scent in an effort to find any additional details. I mean, again, she was found in her underwear. She didn't leave in her underwear.
Yeah, and where's her clothing?
Exactly. So the hounds traced her path from the Valiante's driveway in Mays Landing along the rocky, overgrown wooded area along the train tracks, and then the trail ended in the remote area of woods where she ultimately died. And despite having walked the entire route Tiffany supposedly took that night, they were unable to locate any of her belongings, including her shoes, her shorts, anything.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
And the investigators felt that the dogs had confirmed their belief that she had become distraught and left the house after fighting with her mother and eventually found herself standing at the tracks.
Okay.
That's how they took it.
Okay.
Again, I'm a little confused.
Especially with the phobia.
Where did her clothes go?
Where is her clothes and the phobia of the darkness, like walking in the middle of the woods?
Exactly.
In New Jersey?
Yeah.
That's some densely wooded areas.
And it's like pitch black.
Yeah.
Now, based on the statement taken from Michael Valiante and the description of the accident provided by the student engineer driving the train, the medical examiner labeled the death a suicide and closed the case. 5 days later, Diane and Stephen had Tiffany's remains cremated. which Diane did later say was the, quote, worst decision of her life. Oh. But she said at the time, she, quote, just assumed the investigators did what they were supposed to do.
I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you assume that?
Yeah.
We're led to believe that, they're supposed to do what they do.
But my goodness, it made their lives a lot harder.
Well, I can't imagine having to even make that decision of what to do with your child's remains. Yeah. You would never feel like you made the right decision.
And remains that are not in great condition.
Right.
It's not like you're going to be able to have an open casket funeral. Right. It's not like you're, I'm sure that might have played into it.
I was wondering that myself,
I don't want... this isn't who she was kind of thing. Yeah. So the Valiantes held a memorial mass for Tiffany on July 20th. And everyone assumed that, that the case was closed. We just grieve now. But the natural process of grieving kept getting interrupted because so many questions kept popping up. And weird inconsistencies are popping up. Aside from their disbelief that Tiffany would even have contemplated, much less completed suicide, there was a lot of strange aspects of the case that they just couldn't figure out. Mm-hmm. They were like, this just isn't, it's not all fitting into the pieces here.
The biggest one being, where the fuck are her clothes?
Exactly.
Do those get found?
Yes.
Okay.
So, for one, when she disappeared from the house that night, we're talking about the clothes now, she had been wearing a shirt, shorts, new shoes, and a headband. But when she was struck by the train, she was only in her underwear. And investigators eventually, after more searching, did find her shirt in the woods nearby.
But only her shirt?
They found her shirt next to, are you ready? An axe with red markings.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yup. An axe with red markings on it.
What? I'm not kidding you. I have goosebumps all over my entire body right now. Like, my legs have goosebumps. Yeah. What the fuck?
We're going to get back to that, so don't worry. Hold on to that one, too.
And
this is why you can't just take the suicide at face value.
No, and only her shirt? So where's her shoes, shorts, and headband?
We'll find those, too.
What the fuck?
So it wasn't just the missing evidence and what they believed was investigators' complete unwillingness to consider alternatives that gave the Valiantes some pause here. It was also that the facts were not looking to support investigators' conclusions. It looked like the other way around.
Very much so.
Already. Yeah. According to her sister Jessie, the family found it impossible to believe that late on a summer night, she would suddenly leave a family gathering, discard her cell phone, walk from our family's home, this is a quote, in Mays Landing, more than 4 miles to a remote, thickly wooded section of railroad tracks, and along the way remove her jean shorts, headband, and sneakers before stepping onto the tracks and in front of a train traveling at 80 miles per hour.
That doesn't make any sense.
Like, when you really lay it out like that, you're like, so what?
Like, it's the clothes for me. Like, I just feel like, God forbid, if she was going to end her life, why would she undress first? People do,
for sure,
things at the end of their life that are hard to explain.
That's why this is so confusing.
Yeah.
Because you can really look at either side of this and you can say, yeah, you can't discount suicide. You can't. But you also can't discount that there was foul play here.
Because then you go to the axe with the red markings on it next to her shirt.
You have to see both sides of that. At least I can plainly see that there's not significant evidence to say that this is totally a suicide.
Yeah, no.
But there's not significant evidence to say the other side, but there's significant evidence to question both of those things.
Yes.
100%. And to open again and really take a look. But as we'll see, mishandled. Now, not only was the behavior itself outside of character for Tiffany, whose toxicology report showed no signs of drug or alcohol in her system, but the time of day that she disappeared, again, made it more unbelievable. Like we've been saying, her fear of the dark. According to Diane, it was so severe that she was, quote, petrified of the dark and would normally never venture anywhere alone at night.
Especially not the middle of the fucking woods.
Exactly. And other family and friends also said that time of day was just, they were like, she had a crippling fear of the dark. It wasn't like, I don't like the dark. Yeah. It was a crippling fear. And Allison Walker, who coached Tiffany's junior travel volleyball team, said, it's just not the Tiffany I knew. Tiffany was deathly afraid of the dark, had to have the TV on if the room was dark. The thought of her choosing to walk through not just the dark alone, but a dark wooded area alone, never in my wildest dreams would that happen.
No, that's the thing.
And in the weeks following their daughter's death, Diane started going on like long walks, just trying to clear her head.
Of course, yeah.
Grieving, trying to grieve any way she could.
Right.
It was during one of these walks through the woods.
Don't you dare even tell me that she found her daughter's clothing.
And this is the thing. It was the woods leading towards the tracks because she would go on this like walk probably just to,
maybe try to get in her headspace too, in Tiffany's headspace.
She spotted something under a tree set back about 12 feet from the tracks. When she got closer, she found Tiffany's shoes. She said they were, quote, neatly lined up as though they'd been placed there carefully. She also found her headband, a large keychain like those usually affixed to rental car keys, and a sweatshirt she'd never seen before.
What the fuck? And the fact that investigators searched this area?
Yeah.
I didn't see that, which means possibly two things. One, they didn't investigate well enough because those things were always there. Or two, somebody went back and put them there.
Exactly. And either way,
fucking weird.
And the location was not along the route the bloodhounds had traced weeks earlier, and it was well over a mile from where Tiffany had been struck by the train.
So that makes no sense.
Yeah. That would mean she'd have to take her headband and shoes off. And whose keychain is that? And whose sweatshirt?
And whose sweatshirt.
Yep. And, yeah. So when the
I'm sorry, I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah. And it gets wilder.
How even?
So when the medical examiner performed his evaluation of Tiffany's remains, there was no mention of her feet being super dirty or having sustained any injuries.
Which you would think they would if she was walking barefoot through the fucking
woods. She would have had to walk
almost
2 miles bare feet through the woods.
You're going to get cut.
And that's over rocky, dirty terrain to get where she was at the train. Yeah. So Diane called her husband, who called the state police and directed them to the location to get the evidence.
Smart of her to not even touch that.
And the couple assumed the discovery of new evidence that completely contradicted the early conclusion of suicide would finally lead to a full investigation of what happened to their daughter.
I think anyone with any kind of gray matter between their ears would probably feel the same.
Are you ready to get really angry?
Yeah.
So they're like, cool, we're going to get an investigation now because what the fuck? Whose shit is this?
Right.
Like, what's going on? Before the evidence could be analyzed, transit detectives misplaced the keychain. Oh, and they misplaced the axe. Don't know where it went. And they have never been found. That is the most negligent shit. There is a possible, this young woman got hit by a train. She had her skull crushed by a train, supposedly. And there's an axe found with red markings on it. And before you can test that axe, it gets misplaced.
And then, so
that train would have covered up any blow from an axe.
Yeah, 100%. So the axe went missing and the keychain went missing?
And the keychain that she didn't know where that keychain was.
What about the sweatshirt?
I have no idea.
What?
Well, they also ended up finding Tiffany's shirt along the route. And it had just been put in a knotted plastic bag when it was collected. Like when they collected it. Instead of putting it in an actual evidence container. In that knotted plastic bag that the investigators just threw it into had grown mold due to improper handling and was deemed completely untestable.
What's going on here?
Yeah. I don't know how I understand why people have ideas about what they think happened here because obviously, but like, you gotta at least question this stuff. Like,
that's some shady shit going on.
Because even if you think it was a suicide, it's like, but what's going on here? Like what? How?
I don't know how you misplace an axe.
That's what
That's a big problem for me.
That's a big problem for me.
I've lost a lot of things in my life. Never, 10 fingers up, everybody. Ready, go. Never have I ever lost an axe.
Yeah, I've never done that.
And I'm willing to bet not many of you put a finger down.
Well, in the poor Valiante family, could have been vital evidence.
Of course.
And what a fucking disappointment.
And they found it.
And to hear that it was just mishandled and lost, like...
That would leave such a bad feeling in my gut.
And so while the evidence may have gone missing, the statements taken from the student engineer about the night of Tiffany's death remained.
Oh, this motherfucker.
And as far as the Valiantes were concerned, they only confirmed their suspicion that somebody was hiding something.
Yeah.
Because in his initial statement to the transit police, the student engineer told the detective, quote, as he approached mile marker 45, the pedestrian dove in front of the train. Now, this would imply that Tiffany jumped in front of the train, which gave the train no time to stop.
Yeah.
Because she had just dove in front of it.
Uh-huh.
But then in later interviews, the student engineer described Tiffany as standing on the tracks. Those are two very different things.
Very different things.
Also, he told detectives he'd seen Tiffany, quote, jump or dive a distance of 15 to 20 feet from a standing position.
Is that possible?
Like, either way, those are three very different things.
And he said those all in one sitting or at different times?
Different times.
Okay.
But when investigators examined the area from which she supposedly jumped, they found it was covered with trees and a built-up stone railway grade, which would have made jumping very difficult.
Uh-huh.
Finally, the student engineer said he sounded the train's horn multiple times before the impact, but Tiffany didn't make any attempt to move. But investigators checked the train's black box that it has. It showed that the horn had not been used at all. Not at all. He said several times and she didn't move. Not once.
Why would you lie about that?
It's like they didn't teach you in train school that there's a black box that if you say the horn sounded.
Not train school.
Not train when you say the horn sounded, they can go check and see if the horn sounded. Like, you're going to get caught, my guy.
I actually didn't even know that.
Like, you should know that as a student engineer. I feel like that's like student engineer 101 is like, here's a black box.
I feel. Like train school, am I right?
Like train school. So what's that about? Did she dive in front of the train and you couldn't stop? Was she standing on the tracks and refused to move?
Right.
Or was she standing and then dove 15 to 20 feet? And also, did you sound the horn? No, you didn't, because we've already checked. So what happened, student engineer?
What? I'm so confused.
Yeah. But the final pieces of compelling evidence collected by the Valiantes in the weeks after Tiffany died were the most haunting, I would say.
Oh, no.
Just moments after Diane went inside to get her husband, after she had the argument with Tiffany, a hunter's trap camera captured an image of Tiffany walking down the driveway, phone in hand.
Phone in hand.
And when Diane came out of the house just seconds later, her daughter was gone. And there was no sign of her in either direction. That camera caught her walking to the end of the driveway with her phone. And her mom came out a minute later, and she was gone.
So she had to have gotten in a car, right?
Well, it says when they retrieved the cell phone data from the carrier, it showed that a call came into the phone about a half hour after Tiffany disappeared, and it was answered.
Would she have died by that point?
Well, later, the phone was discovered at the edge of the Valiantes' property.
So there's no...
How could Tiffany have answered the phone?
Right.
If the phone was several miles from where she was at that point?
Right.
The phone was back at the Valiantes' property when she was already at the train tracks. Yeah. How did someone answer the phone unless that phone was put there after?
You wish they knew, like, who called so they could say, like, was it Tiffany that I mean, obviously it's not Tiffany that answered. No. So who was it a man's voice? Was it a woman's voice?
It's such a mystery. Like, how did all of this, and when you look it up, the camera, like the photo, is very haunting.
I bet.
So because Tiffany's cause of death had been listed as a suicide, and no one had been able to provide, like, solid evidence to argue otherwise.
Oh, I just looked up that picture.
State and local authorities had no reason to reopen the case, according to them, and further investigate, which I don't know about that. But after a year of just frustration, grief, and unanswered questions, Diane and Stephen Valiante finally decided to take action in order to compel the medical examiner's office to just change the cause of death.
Right.
They just wanted it changed from suicide to undetermined. Yeah. That's all they were. Because if they did that, then it would allow the case to be reopened. Mm-hmm. But because they were refusing to do anything, they couldn't reopen it.
Right.
So in July 2016, the Valiantes reached out to the D'Amato law firm, which was a local agency who agreed to take the case pro bono, actually. And in a statement to the press, Paul D'Amato said, "We looked at all her medical records. There wasn't any suggestion of any alcohol problems, drug problems, or depression." And he said the state's inquiries was flawed. It was unprofessional, uninformed, and it relied on equally superficial investigative efforts by New Jersey Transit. The medical examiner's finding regarding manner of death, issued only 5 days after the incident, should unquestionably be retracted and nullified.
I mean, yeah.
Now, usually for, like, civil lawsuits are usually for financial compensation. Mm-hmm. That's usually the end game. But the Valiantes were not looking for a fucking dime.
Yeah.
They just wanted
justice,
this change so they could reopen the case. That's all they were looking for here. And also, by filing the suit, D'Amato would cause to subpoena any records and evidence related to the incident, and for new interviews to be conducted for any investigators, anybody that was overlooked. So this kind of helped, like, get it going without get it going kind of thing. Like, it was like, once you open the lawsuit, you kind of have to dig into the case a little bit. He said, "We believe there are people out there who know something, including several people who were not interviewed by New Jersey Transit."
So that's weird.
So the first lawsuit, which was filed against the medical examiner's office and then a few other state agencies that were first involved in the initial investigation, claimed a lot of things. But one of the things it claimed was Tiffany Valiante did not take her life, but that she was the victim of a conspiracy to inflict bodily harm, violently abducted on the night of July 12th, 2015, and subsequently murdered. The Valiantes believed that instead of what they were, like, investigators were saying, that she jumped out in front of the train, as authorities were saying, she was kidnapped from the front yard, murdered, and her killer had hid his crime by hurling her in the path of an oncoming locomotive.
I can see why people might think that.
Which is, it's believable.
It is believable.
Like, this is not out of the realm of possibility.
Not at all.
And again, if it's not out of the realm of possibility and there are things that you can match up with this, that's cause enough for me to open it back up.
Absolutely, there is.
So a year later, when the case still hadn't reached the court, D'Amato amended the lawsuit, removing the various state agencies and instead filing the claim against male does 1 to 5 and female does 1 to 5. Their names are kind of like erroneous here, so just a bunch of people, like specific people. While the complaint itself remained, like, pretty much intact, and it relied on the same complaints and circumstantial evidence that the family had raised previously, it also had some new statements, including testimony from Louise Hausman, who was a former medical investigator for the Atlantic County Medical Examiner's Office.
Okay.
Hausman was brought in to review all the information collected, and she did, and anything that the family had collected in the 2 years since Tiffany's death. And after carefully considering the evidence, she concluded, quote, "There are enough unanswered questions, false statements, conflicting accounts regarding this fatality, and incomplete investigative information, which leads me to the conclusion that the death certificate should be amended from suicide to undetermined."
Absolutely.
Now, while Hausman's evaluation pointed to the evidence, the inconsistencies, other previously mentioned unusual aspects of this whole case as reason enough to reopen the investigation, she also noted that the medical examiner's assessment of the circumstances of the death included, quote, "inaccurate, unsubstantiated, and false information." This false information and unsubstantiated information included various statements attributed to several of Tiffany's friends and her uncle.
I was waiting for that to come
which
back.
were used to justify the determination of suicide. All those parties claimed they never made those statements, or that they
What the fuck?
or that they were taken and twisted.
What?
For example, the case file from New Jersey Transit, which included several statements about Tiffany's supposedly distraught mental state by her uncle, Michael Valiante, he claims he never made them.
How are they just, like...
Yep.
I'm like, did you guys think that it wasn't going to get out, what you reported, and her uncle wasn't going to be like, yeah, I didn't fucking say that?
No, they probably didn't care, because look, nothing's happened.
I don't know how people can be such shit. I really don't. Especially when it comes to, like, somebody's life and like this family losing their young teenage daughter
just going off to college
at like the prime of her entire life.
Well, and those statements about her self-harming, that you were like, that's the history of. Nope,
he never said that,
and they also weren't supported by any physical evidence on her body.
Are you kidding me? That's a fucked up thing to lie about.
Yeah. And in a statement to the press, Houseman told a reporter, within 36 hours, the medical examiner determined this to be a suicide without any information on her medical history, without anybody talking to the family. There was no investigative done to this. And she's in most cases, or in many cases, when somebody takes their own life, investigators will conduct what's called a psychological autopsy.
Okay.
They work with the family, the individual's medical team, mental health providers to determine what could have been the circumstances or reasons.
That makes sense.
Just part of the process.
Yeah, and that did not happen here.
The medical examiner totally skipped this step and instead just relied on his misunderstanding of statements from Tiffany's uncle and friends, all of whom at the time were in like a state of shock at this moment, had no idea what was going on.
And just didn't even say the things that some people said they said.
Are claiming that they didn't even say these things. Like there should have been some deeper digging at the very least.
This is so fucking shady.
Yeah. So in December, news of the lawsuit had reached beyond the local press, and this case was featured in a massive expose on the state's medical examiner system. And in the article, which included a lot of cases, because they were really digging in for this, the reporters point to a long list of really shocking shortcomings and flat-out failures on the part of the New Jersey Medical Examiner's Office.
Oh, no.
Body parts going missing.
I'm sorry, what?
Quote, decomposing bodies stacked two to a gurney. And countless unanswered questions that make it so family members don't have any fucking clue how their family member died.
So has this office been shut down?
So also, just as like a quick side note, because it's just reminding me of it. If you guys aren't listening to Noble, this podcast.
She just recommended it to me today. I'm going to start it on my way home.
It's called Noble. Go listen to it. It's fascinating. It's shocking. It's horrifying. And really well done.
It immediately reminded me of the same thing.
Yeah, it made me think of it. So the report on the medical examiner's office supported what D'Amato and the Valiantes had come to believe. That even if this is like limited resources or overworked staff, the state was really lax on their investigating of Tiffany's death. And in this situation, they probably rushed to the conclusion just to move the case from open to closed, get it off their things. I mean, if they've got decomposing bodies in a room and like decomposing bodies stacked two to a gurney, missing body parts, someone being found on a train track and a student engineer claiming that they dove in front of it, get it off our desk. They probably just, get that one out.
I'm just in a state of absolute bewilderment right now.
Yeah. So a few months after filing their amended case with the Superior Court, D'Amato added additional supporting documentation, including a statement from Dr. Donald Jason. Dr. Donald Jason was an independent forensic pathologist hired by the Valiantes to review the case.
Okay.
Dr. Jason reviewed the material related to the death, and he said, the bias towards suicide negatively affected the way in which the scene was processed by all members of the team, both responding police and medical examiner staff. And he said this was contrary to the standard approach to investigation that dictates investigators treat the location as a crime scene until it's determined to be otherwise.
Right.
Totally contradictory to that. And after reviewing the information, Dr. Jason concluded, the story that the victim jumped onto the tracks is suspicious. The victim may have been sleeping or already dead when struck by the train.
Why did they say that?
Because they were saying that's a possibility.
Oh, okay.
Simply put, as far as Dr. Jason could tell, the medical examiner was way too quick to label this death a suicide without first ruling out other possibilities, which they did not do. They didn't rule out anything else. He actually said, quote, I've never seen another case mishandled like this.
Wow.
Which is something.
And so, it's literally like a young girl.
Yeah. And this story going public and the Valiantes, putting pressure on this case, it put a lot of pressure on the medical examiner's office, and they finally agreed to reevaluate the case.
Good.
But
what are they going to do?
And it's the same office.
one, it's the same office. Two, unfortunately, her body's been cremated, so it's not like you can even exhume the body. And
no, but they can look back at all the reports that they have and the pictures and the everything. But it's the same office. You think they're going to come back and be like, wow, we really did fuck this up. But like, I hate when they do that. I'm like, bring it somewhere else.
Can another office take it over? Like, is that...
But you're right. The cremation makes it so difficult.
It does, yeah.
Because it's like, you have to rely now on what this office documented.
Right.
And of course, they found that the initial finding of suicide was appropriate, and we're not going to change it.
Fuck that. Incorrect.
Yeah. So, the problem with the civil suit that the Valiantes had against the state and the amended suit is that, like, so they're alleging that crimes have been committed, kidnapping and murder, which we know it could possibly be possible, that.
Yeah.
But there's no solid evidence to support that. And the theory wasn't really expanded upon in these suits.
I feel like
in a good way.
There is some evidence to support that, like the phone being
there's
answered.
Evidence. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, there is evidence.
Right.
But it's like circumstantial. It's like they can't pinpoint it to any person or any theory of like who this is or why this happened.
I'm so fucking angry that they quote unquote, lost that axe.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, and I'm not saying like they don't have compelling evidence. I'm saying the suit did not argue the evidence.
Oh, okay.
Enough to make a compelling argument for it. Mm-hmm. So, and it's like, that's frustrating because like there could be a compelling narrative here.
Yeah.
Like the biggest one for me is she's found in only her underwear.
So
to
strange.
me, that looks like there was sexual assault here or something awful.
And especially with her clothes being scattered in different areas.
Within like a mile of the site all over the place. Like, but the impact of the train had caused considerable damage, which hid any, pre-mortem trauma. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you don't have that to go on either. And it's like, if they still had the axe, they could have tested the axe. Mm-hmm. They could have looked up pictures and matched it up with pictures, seen what,
Yeah, I'm wondering too about that sweatshirt. I'm like, was DNA testing done on that sweatshirt at all to see if any of Tiffany's DNA was on that? Or
nothing was done.
Maybe somebody in the system's fucking DNA.
Well, also, what's even more frustrating, because again, found in her underwear, where's the rape kit?
Yeah.
Never conducted a rape kit or even considered conducting a rape kit.
Could they have in the condition that her body was found in? They could have. Okay.
Absolutely.
And now they can't ever do that.
Now they can't. But the best D'Amato and the Valiantes could argue was that the location that the investigators discovered some of Tiffany's belongings in, along with the axe, was also a known party spot with a local fraternity house. That itself does not tell you anything because I'm not labeling fraternities as like they're the problem. But this particular one was under investigation for past sexual assaults.
Dude.
So that is suspicious.
Uh-huh.
And also, after Tiffany's death, a local Wawa employee told investigators he, quote, overheard a group of teenage boys talking about Tiffany having been kidnapped at gunpoint, humiliated, forced to strip down to her underwear, and driven to the train station by her abductors.
Oh.
But they said it was circumstantial and unsubstantiated.
Can you try to substantiate it? That's the thing. Can you go fucking interview some people?
That's pretty on the nose.
Go start asking people in that area if somebody must have seen something. And somebody, if that's true, somebody out there has a guilty conscience and they better come forward and say some shit. Because if that actually happened, somebody there felt like that was wrong. You can't tell me that everybody in that room was okay with that if that did happen. Yeah. So come on forward.
Let's go.
It's your time to shine.
And like we said, the suicide theory is supported by equally circumstantial evidence. It's not like the suicide theory has the solid evidence and the other theory doesn't have any. No.
There's evidence on both sides.
Equally as like, it's just...
I don't even know. I feel like for me, at least...
I feel like the other side, the foul play side, has more.
Foul play is way more.
It really does. I agree.
Because really... The only evidence for suicide in my mind is she was in a little bit of trouble and perhaps there was turmoil at home, but nobody even really knows if there was turmoil at home because it sounds like people's statements were taken out of context.
There was some stuff at home. The mother and Diane and Tiffany had to be ordered to go to therapy together at one point. So there definitely was not like...
So there's turmoil at home.
It wasn't rainbows and butterflies, but like whose house is.
Yeah.
But,
so there's turmoil at home. She just got in trouble, you know, like just finished high school, I guess.
So that is like, that's the thing. There is that. It's not like everything was
hunky-dory.
But
different places. But I feel like there's a way longer list on the side of foul play.
And that's why it's so hard.
And who knows? I mean, like, you hope that Wawa employee didn't make that up, but like, that's a crazy fucking statement.
It's wild.
And it fits perfectly, but who knows? Like, you never know when certain details about the case came out.
When they leaked, all that. That's the thing. You can go back and forth on this.
But that is weird.
Yeah. And I feel like we've given you 2 of these in a row, actually. I just thought of that, where it's like you can go on either side and at least put some evidence on either side.
I feel like with this one, honestly, there's like more...
Well, that's the thing. I feel like with both of them, I lean more to one side, but I can't
completely decide.
Conclusively say what way I lean completely.
I really hope both of these cases get solved. Now I'm like, these parents, it's been almost 10 years and they don't have any
It just doesn't
answers.
Feel like suicide to me. No, it really doesn't. It doesn't feel like suicide to me.
No.
And if it is, prove it. That's the thing. Like, prove it. You're not proving it.
You're not proving it. I just feel like people, it doesn't sound like anyone was interviewed ever. Like, was anyone spoken to other than like a couple friends and her uncle whose statements were taken out of context or just completely fabricated?
Yeah. It just doesn't.
Like,
they talked to like the coaches and stuff, and like people who knew her, who all agreed she wouldn't have gone wandering into the dark. That was one of the biggest.
That's the thing.
Things.
And then like, why didn't anybody, who's to say maybe they did or maybe they didn't, but like, did anybody go to that frat house and interview some frat brothers?
No.
Not because like it's a frat house, but because
they had already
been under investigation. And then that Wawa employee's statement.
Well, and the problem was too that investigators mishandled this case so badly that evidence was destroyed.
Yeah.
And
completely fucking lost.
Yeah.
I don't know how you lose an axe. I really don't know how you lose an axe.
But we see that all the time, that they'll be like, oh yeah, we lost it. And
it's always shady.
And it's like, how the fuck does that happen?
Because it's always something that would like probably conclusively.
That would prove one way or another. And it's like, Well, unfortunately, the lawsuits were pretty unsuccessful in getting the death certificates changed. But in the years since Tiffany's death, Diane and Stephen Valiante have pressed on. They want to find out the truth. And in 2019, D'Amato filed another lawsuit. So he's still on it.
Good.
This time against New Jersey Transit, and demanded that they share any physical evidence that they could that would help determine what happened on the night of Tiffany's death.
I wonder if there still is any.
The process was super slow, but eventually they did get access to the physical evidence, including...
So there is.
Which I didn't even know about this until the end of this case, including a blood-stained towel and a T-shirt. So you would go, wow, I wonder what's going to happen when they test that. Well, they sent it to an independent lab for testing, and the lab determined that the items had been so mishandled that they were of no scientific probative value.
No, I'm so mad right now.
According to the lab, the items had been improperly stored in plastic containers, which allowed for moisture-inducing bacterial contamination that made the evidence of no investigatory value.
Who the fuck is part of this chain of custody?
You gotta be.
Who the fuck? Because this happens twice.
A big
dingbat.
Bowl of stupid.
Dingbat.
To be part of an investigatory team at a fucking scene of a death and not know how to properly store evidence. Where the fuck were you on that day in the academy? Because that's insane. To not know how to store evidence so that it doesn't get eaten up by bacteria? How the fuck do you not know that?
And also, it already fucking happened once, so you would think that you would literally, especially on the same fucking case, you wouldn't make that mistake again.
All of the evidence for this case was completely unusable.
And that's weird. And that doesn't happen.
It's at least, at the very least, it's fucking suspect.
Sus.
And you should look back into this at the very fucking least.
But then it's like, what do you do? Because there's no evidence.
I know.
Like all of it's contaminated or fucking lost.
Well, and in 2022, her Tiffany's case appeared on Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries.
I saw that, yeah.
Diane restated her belief that there was foul play here.
I think there was.
And the family also increased the reward for information leading prosecution to $40,000.
Wow.
It's still uncollected to this day. And the episode of Unsolved Mysteries didn't really bring in any new information, but it did raise awareness of this case.
Which is important.
Stephen, her father, said it opened a lot of people's eyes. Everybody heard this nitbit, little piece here, little piece there, but they never knew the whole story until they watched it. Meanwhile, the Valiantes are continuing to work with Paul D'Amato, which I was like, this guy.
That guy.
In the hopes of finding new information that's going to lead to any answer. They just want a definitive answer. And
I hope he helps them get it because he seems determined as fuck.
D'Amato said, I have a strong belief that something is going to break this year. I truly do. That's what he told in 2023. But as of yet, it has not broken. But we are only in 2024. Know. Guys, like, if you know fucking anything, I mean, and again, they just want to know. They just want to know. They believe she was met with foul play. There's evidence to believe that.
Right.
There is circumstantial evidence for suicide. I can understand that.
Yeah.
They just want to know. And if there's evidence for foul play, which to me, there's plenty, why are we not investigating this further? You just got to know. Because if this is foul play, somebody got away with it or somebody's got away with it. And why are we just letting that happen?
And that's just going to make them more bold to do this again.
Yeah.
Wow, this stressed me out.
I feel for this family.
I feel bad for this family.
I feel for it all. And
because also that's the community that you're living in. And you put your faith and you put your trust in law enforcement in the community that you're in. And
so mishandled.
It was completely like I'd be so angry, and I'm sure that I can't imagine how angry they are.
I hope a lot of people got slapped with a lot of demotions and firings after this, because it's like
probably not.
How do you mishandle evidence like that?
How do you lose an axe?
How do you mishandle every bit of evidence like that? Like, that's what I don't get.
But something's got to give here.
Yeah.
I hope that he was onto something when he said, like, he thinks something was going to break in 2023, and it's just taken a little longer.
Let's put it out there, because,
guys, sometimes we'll cover a case and something will happen. It's this, like, weird thing that we were talking about it recently. Universe, let's get it solved.
Universe, let's go. And we're not taking credit for any of those. Anybody?
No, obviously not. Oh, if you think that, go away.
No, it's just sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
The vibes are out there. I want this family to know what the fuck happened.
Yes.
I just want that for them. So hopefully more knowledge of this case is what it takes. Tell your friends about the case.
Yeah, exactly. Share that episode. Watch the Netflix.
Know someone in New Jersey? Talk to them. See what they know.
This is weird.
Yeah. So that's the mysterious death of Tiffany Valiante. And it's a sad one.
Yeah, I had heard of that, but I did not know all of the details, and I'm shocked. I'm in a state of absolute shock right now.
I just want answers, man. I really do.
And her family deserves them. I just
want it.
So with that being said, we hope you keep listening.
And we hope you
keep it weird. But not so weird that if you have information about this case, you don't come forward, because guess what? That's wrong, and karma's gonna get you. So if you have information about the case, you better come forward, you little poop.
Hell yeah.
I just spit across the room. It was gross.